Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have all of our listeners back again. I told you in this fourth quarter, my goal was to find guests that would not only help us today, but propel us in 2025 to really create the success that we want to have in our business and in our life. And today, I think I found that guest with us today. Dre, would you share with them what problem will you help our listeners solve today?
Well, Gary, I'll tell you, my superpower is taking complex issues and complex topics and breaking them down into simple, bite-sized, easy to understand pieces so we can take anything from mindset to performance to producing results to consistency. And we're going to break it down, make it simple enough that even a fifth grader can understand it, apply it, and go use it.
Well, that's great, because sometimes in business, we make things way too complex, and really it's the end of the year. So it's really about getting your game plan together going into 2025, because it's going to be here before we know it. So today with us is Dre Baldwin. He's CEO and founder of Work on Your Game, who's done 4 TEDx talks and has authored 35 books after a 9-year professional basketball career. Dre, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here, Gary. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's exciting to have you because I looked up and did some research on you, and I really felt like you would be a good person in this fourth quarter, because what we're trying to do is change some of those mindsets with our business owners and really get them to think, instead of the glass half empty, it's half full. So I guess the question I would have you is, I saw about Work on Your Game. What's that all about? And how can me as an everyday business owner use that in my business?
Well, Work on Your Game is all about helping people perform at their highest level, do so consistently, and produce more results. And that's all drawn from my background as a professional athlete, and taking the same tools to help athletes reach the top of the sports game and applying those same tools to the business and professional game, minus the push-ups and the wind sprints. But everything else that helps you make it as an athlete, that's what we use over in the business world.
Yeah, and that becomes so important for us to really realize that it's a mental game in business too. I mean, I know basketball, it had to be a mental game because, number one, with your travel and then with games there. But for business owners, it's about showing up every day, because if you don't, your business kind of gets very relaxed, very comfortable, but it becomes where I always tell people, you're either moving forward or backward in business. There's no other way to do it. So share with me, because I know one of your philosophies is discipline is so important to really, for that aspect of success that you have, and how important that is, and what you think discipline, how that plays a role in it.
Well, discipline is the foundation. If you were to ask me what's the most important aspect of mindset, or let's just say intangibles, when it comes to success around, especially the mental game, it's discipline. And discipline, I define it as your willingness and ability to show up consistently and do the work, whatever that job happens to be. And if you stop 100 people on the street, Gary, and ask them, is there any aspect of your life in which you need to be more disciplined? Everybody would say yes. Everyone can answer that question with something in which they need more discipline. And we all understand that when we say more discipline, that means we need to be more consistent. We need to actually maybe just start doing a thing, do more of it, or do it the way it's supposed to be done. All of us fall short of that because no human being is perfect. So more discipline usually leads to more confidence, confidence to performance, and performance to results.
Well, and I think you bring up an interesting word there, is that confidence of what discipline does to us to create that confidence. But I'd be curious to hear some of your thoughts on that, because if we have discipline, it ultimately, as I think I've read before in some of your book and some of your works, it creates that confidence in that individual. Is that correct?
That's right. And most people, again, if you stop people on the street and ask them if they needed more discipline, everybody would say yes. But if you ask them what do they actually want more of, most people would say confidence, because confidence feels good. Confidence usually leads us to putting our best foot forward more boldly, more authentically. We're less self-conscious. we understand that if we are more confident, we'll probably try more stuff. And assuming you have some baseline level of ability, if you try more things, you'll probably succeed at more things. And then you'll get more of the rewards that you want to have in life. So most people are looking for confidence. The issue is many people don't know how to get it. And the way you get confidence is through discipline. So more discipline leads to that confidence, and then you get all the other things that you want. And the reason people come up short on confidence is because they don't want to sign up for discipline.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the hard part. I mean, I get people all the time, Dre. I lost 75 pounds back in 2002. And I lost 75 pounds. And people ask all the time, if I would have had a magic pill that I told them, take this pill and they'd lose that weight, boy, I think I could have sold them for any price that was out there. But when I told them that it was through hard work and it was dedication and that discipline of my exercise routine and my eating routine, then it was kind of like, oh, that wasn't the secret sauce they wanted to hear. And in business, we have to realize right now, business is changing. It's very challenging right now to be in business because the world is changing. And when the world's changing, the goal is business owners have to change because our businesses have to change with it. I mean, just one small example is, of course, AI. And I was just at a conference this last week, and they were talking about AI, and people think it's going to replace people. It's not going to replace, but it's changing how we play the game. Very similar, I'm sure, in your 9-year professional career, things changed within that 9 years than when you came in, probably as that rookie season. Would you not agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Or which part we asking about, basketball or AI?
Yep, let's talk about basketball here. I want to see
Yeah.
what was some of them things you had to learn, though. Let's apply it, but we'll
Yeah.
apply it to business. What did you have to learn in basketball from your rookie year till that 9th year of in your career?
Well, the biggest thing is, and it's funny because I was just watching some old Michael Jordan videos this morning. But when it comes to playing a sport, there's a reason why they call sports a young man's game, because your prime years of athletic ability are usually in your 20s into maybe a couple years into your 30s, and then after that you start to lose it. And it's not like when you're 35, it's not like you're old, but in the sports world you are old because you're not quite as quick, you can't jump quite as high, the endurance may not be as good. So you have to adjust your game and your performance to make up for what you start to lack relative to your competition physically. So you can't jump over everybody anymore, but you can now replace with your mind what you can no longer do with your legs. So that's one of the adjustments you have to make as an athlete. And that applies in every single sport. And this is the reason why most athletes by the age of 40, they're already out of a career. Again, usually that's pretty young. 40 years old is pretty young relatively, but in the sports world, that's ancient because, again, you got to be young to be successful at the pro level of a sport.
Yeah. And I think it's true in business. We have a lot more energy early in our business. Most people get in their 20s, 30s, not everyone, but you have a lot more energy. In them first 5 or 10 years, you're creating it. So you're really energized. But for some of our business owners, they've been in 15 or 20, and now they're seeing all this change. And they have this mental block that says, I don't want to get an AI or don't want to do this with my business, but we have to change to the time. So to me, it applies, which you went through. It may have been your skill set and part of his age as it declined, but also in business that declines because sometimes we're not willing to change. And I think that really sets me up great for my next question I had for you is really thinking about how does that mental toughness, it's of course, you've already shared that, how important it is in sports, but how can we apply that to our business and life to get that same mental toughness?
Let's first understand, Gary, what mental toughness is. And
That's
it's
good.
your willingness and ability to keep showing up and remain disciplined and remain confident, even though doing all the quote unquote right things are not yet producing the desired outcome. And this happens in all of us in life, no matter how skilled, talented, no matter how clear our plans are, things are not always going to go the way we expect them to go. And one reason is because we don't control 99% of life, which includes other people who may be involved in our plans. We can't guarantee they're going to show up or do what we expect them to do. Or, somebody may just throw a wrench in your plans, or they may respond differently than the way you expect them to. And mental toughness is about how can you continue to do your job, even though doing your job isn't working yet? And how can you make adjustments if necessary? And how can you stay mentally locked in to the goal, even though the process is very messy right now? So some other terms people use for this are persistence, resilience, grit, stick-to-itiveness. They're all interchangeable in this context. But mental toughness is a requirement because everybody in life goes through stuff, Gary. Everybody goes through stuff. What separates the successful, quote unquote, from those who get to stand on stage and give speeches and write books about themselves from everybody else is that the successful are the people who went through the stuff and kept going. They got through it and got to success, so now they can tell their stories. It's not that they're the only people who have a story. Everybody has a story, but we don't want to hear the stories of the people who didn't go through the stuff and keep going. We want to hear the stories of the people who went through it, kept going, and became a success anyway.
Yeah, that's some great information there. I tell you, there's so many sound bites there, Dre, that you just mentioned. When it gets tough, we always hear the tough keep going. That
That's right.
becomes the real key is, are you willing to fight through that adversity that you have there? And we're going to discuss a lot more and really decide how you can put this into your life and get that mental toughness when we come back from this short commercial break. We'll be right back. Feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and burned out in your business and life? Discover the Clarity Navigator. This system is your key to achieving your most elusive goals. Here's how it works. Through one-on-one coaching, we'll tailor a plan to your unique needs, helping you manage your workload, avoid burnout, and make the most of your time. We'll delve deep into your vision, gain clarity on your goals, and map out a 3-year plan for your business and personal life. We cover the vital areas like health, relationships, professional growth, financial stability, spiritual well-being, and continuous learning. Setting clear 3-year business goals and KPIs is our foundation. We break these down in achievable annual goals, each with 90-day targets and action plans. Say goodbye to stress and burnout. Take action now to join the Clarity Navigator program. Invest in yourself and your business and start living a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. Achieve success on your terms with the Clarity Navigator. Go to show notes and click the link and step toward the life and business you've always dreamed of. And now back to the show. Dre, I think that was so important what you just set up there, because it's really that mental toughness. And I know that's an area that you really like to talk about and you share. But I think it may be really beneficial of how does that mental toughness, how valuable was that for you and your initiative as you were kind of changing career from the sports side to getting into the business world?
Great question. As a matter of fact, I needed the initiative just to get into my sports career to begin with. I don't know if you even knew that.
No, I did not.
Yeah, I came out of a Division III college, which anybody who knows the college sports world knows that D3 is not the level that produces the pro players. So that's usually the D1 guys you see on TV. So the D3 guys down in the basement, that's where I was. So no one was calling my phone when I got out of college. I had to call phones in order to even get my chance to play pro. So I already knew what it meant to take initiative to get into a career. So by the time I stopped playing ball, I stopped playing in 2015, to give everyone a time frame here, I knew I wanted to, the first thing I was going to try to do was professional speaking, because I've been making content on the internet and people told me, hey, we like the way you speak, the way you break things down, just my fans on the internet, like YouTube. And I found out that there was a whole industry, Gary, based on people getting on the stage, giving a speech and actually making money for it. I didn't know that was a thing. I said, oh, well, maybe I can do that. And I went and found someone. I got introduced to someone, luckily, who was already a full-time professional speaker. And she basically started giving me the game. She just said, hey, you're a former athlete, which is great because these organizations who hire speakers love athletes. They love athletes because you all had to deal with leadership, good and bad leadership. You had to deal with teamwork. You had to work with people who you may not know or come from different worlds. It's all about performance culture. You had to show up every day and do your work. You had to be confident to perform. And if you're not performing, you can get fired. And that's exactly how it is in the professional world. So your background is perfect for this. Now you just have to take all this stuff you have, because I already had work on your game. So you have to take all this stuff and you have to organize it in such a way that people who never played sports can understand why it matters for them. And that's what I went and figured out. And I created frameworks around it. And my first year or two out of professional sports, Gary, the way I got into the game was, in addition to the content I was putting out, but aside from that, was I just made a whole bunch of phone calls. I made a whole bunch of cold calls. I sent a whole bunch of cold emails. I got some responses and I did a whole bunch of free speaking gigs. And that's how I started to build my momentum. And what my mentor told me was that, you're a good speaker, not because they clap for you when you're done or come shake your hand, But when you're done, someone comes up to you and offers you to speak somewhere else. And maybe the place you spoke at for free this year offers to pay you next year. That's how you know you're good. You know you're good based on the business, not based on the emotions and the pats on the back. And I started to get some of those callbacks. I started to get, okay, you spoke for free this year. Can you come we'll pay you next year. That's how I started to know that I was actually good. And then I just kept doing more of it.
Yeah, a couple different things that I really heard there. A lot of great information is number one is someone mentoring you,
Yes.
and we talk a lot about in this podcast because small business owners, Dre, I forget the exact number of small businesses. Of course, it changes daily that there are in the country in just the United States. And a lot of small business owners don't have someone helping them, that's coaching
Mhm.
them, that's mentoring them. And that becomes one of them areas they get stuck because they're only within themselves, and being able to hear from someone else, hopefully that's part of the reason they listen to this podcast, is they get to hear from others and really decide what do they need to do. But I think that's huge. It's someone, you find someone that will help mentor you. I don't care if you've been in the game 10 years or 15 years, and we're talking about the game of business there. You still need someone to mentor you. Of course, that's what I do in my industry, but I'm not saying for me. Find the person that fits for you, but you need a coach, a mentor on your side to help you in those tough spots, because they will tell you the things like you heard about. You heard about take your information and now make it frameworks. Start speaking for free. Put your reps in, just like you had to do on the basketball court, right? You had to put the reps in.
Right.
You didn't just show up on game day. How many shots did you take every week before you even showed up for game day that was
Right.
there, and the running and everything else? Well, you don't have to do those things, but you still have to show up there. So important about putting those reps in. And I think this is good for people to renew, because you got to renew yourself too, because there's some business owners, let's be honest, we just went through an election cycle and everything else, and they're a little bit maybe downtrodden. Instead, now it's time about planning to get yourself prepared so you make the rest of this year great, but then you really propel and jump yourself forward in 2025. Along with that, I guess, what do you think from you? I mean, I've caught many different things, so I know there's many things I get from you, but what would be the most valuable thing people get from you when they're listening to you, Dre?
That we're in a results-based business. That
Mm.
is the bottom line of whether we're talking to athletes, the result is whatever the scoreboard says. In the business world, the result is whatever you decide. What's the result? Is it we need to get this number of people in our pipeline because maybe you have a long sales cycle? Is it certain number of closes we need to do every single day? Maybe it's every month. Maybe it's a revenue goal you have every day, every week, every year. But what is the goal? Anytime someone comes to me and they ask me for help, or they ask me for advice, or they say, I have this problem, can you help me fix it? I always respond to their question with a question. What's the goal? What are we actually trying to achieve? Because I tell people this all the time, especially people who are at an expert level, is that you are unqualified to give anyone advice if you are unsure of what their goal is. And do not
Mm.
assume you know another person's goal. And don't assume that their goal is the same as your goal. Because two people could be doing the same thing, but they're trying to go to different places. Now, one guy in the basketball gym might be trying to go to the NBA. The other guy just wants to be a famous YouTuber. We don't have the same goal. All right. We may not do the same things when we get out of that gym based on our different goals. So you cannot assume that you know what someone wants to achieve. And I tell people our goal is to, first of all, develop your game. Then you go out there and you perform. When you perform, you produce results. And when you produce results, you get whatever rewards you want. So that's our framework. That's what it's all about. And then everything else we talked about here, Gary, are just means to the end of results.
Yeah, I love what you talk about goals, because what a great time we're in that last quarter of the year to really, it's time to really set some. And I believe when I work with clients, they are so surprised after they set goals and then they achieve them. I had one gentleman set one for a 3-year goal to own his own location. He was renting a space and did it within less than a year after he wrote the goal down. Because why? He
Mm,
could see where he's going. I tell people, one of my quotes is, it's goals are like having your headlights on because you know where you're going. And
that's
you've
right.
got that roadmap, that GPS that's there. So it's so important. One thing I've thought about that as you were discussing, and we've talked about many different topics, is, going back to that discipline. Why do you think that's more important than just having motivation?
Well, motivation comes and goes. You can't always depend on motivation. Motivation sometimes shows up and sometimes it doesn't. So while it is good to have motivation, you can't plan a career around motivation, because sometimes you will wake up and you don't feel motivated. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes it's cold outside. Sometimes your knee hurts. Sometimes you have a headache, but you still have to do your job. And what people have to understand about being a professional is the definition of a professional is someone who does something as their main paid occupation. And I have never known anyone, Gary, maybe you do, who can do something and get paid consistently while working inconsistently. It doesn't happen. All right. So if you're going to get paid consistently, you have to deliver consistently. And to deliver consistently, you need tools that are consistent and can be depended on to show up every time, regardless of how you feel. Motivation is not that. Motivation does not fit that description. Discipline fits that description, because even when I'm not motivated, as long as I'm disciplined, I'll still go to the gym. I'll still make the calls I need to make. I'll still reply to the emails I need to reply to. I'll still do everything that I need to do business-wise, even when I don't feel like it, because of discipline. But if I was depending on motivation, then I would be an amateur, because whenever I'm lacking motivation, I would just do nothing. Amateurs have that luxury because nobody's paying them. But see, as soon as you become a professional and you accept a check, you have to show up. It's not optional anymore. That's why you need discipline.
Dre, great information that you're sharing. Man, I tell you, this is one of those podcasts I'm already telling you, you got to go back and re-listen to, because there's some great nuggets here that you've shared. I appreciate you sharing with our audience, and what a great time to have this right now to get them prepared for as they go into this first quarter of 2025. One thing I just thought of, it's hard to believe we're going to go into the second half of this decade already in 2025. It's just kind of crazy. You think about it, think back to 2020. It seems like it was there yesterday. So I'm going to have you kind of put your, genie hat on, or whatever you want to call it. But I want you to think about, what do you think some of those skills that are going to be most important as we continue through this decade and into the future?
Well, I'll tell you, Gary, what I tell people are called future-proof skills. These are skills that will always matter no matter what changes. Number one, your ability to communicate. One-to-one or one-to-many. Communication skills are always in demand, and whoever's best at them, you don't even have to be that good at the other things you do, because they multiply the abilities of everything else, whether those are good or bad. So communication. Underneath that, a sub-skill is sales skills, the ability to sell, to get another person to see your idea or to see your product or service and get the same thought or feeling about it as what you have, is another future-proof skill. And if I had to give you one more, it's the ability to look at a situation and interpret what's really going on as opposed to what's being presented to you, also known as discernment. So your ability to look at a situation and figure out what's actually happening as opposed to what the official story, quote unquote, is. That's an important skill, because that'll separate you from the masses of people who just accept whatever they're told on the surface. And as the saying goes, you want to be wildly successful, look around at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite of that. So you have to be able to figure out, what is everybody else thinking and how can I go the opposite direction?
Wow, great information. I truly appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's so critical as we go forward in this second half of this decade, but then as we go forward throughout. Now, Dre, you've written 35 books, so we can't tell them to read them all, because they'll probably stress them out. But I think you're willing to give us a free book for any of the listeners, and it's called The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. So can you give us a snapshot? If they read that book, what will they get out of it?
Sure. So the third day, if you're watching on video, is this red book right here behind me. And it's all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. So the third day is just a metaphor that I created. It's like if someone's going to the gym. The first day, you feel really excited. If you haven't been there in a while, you're excited to go work out again with your new trainer. Second day, still excited, maybe a little bit less because you have a little bit of soreness from the first day. And by the third day, you realize that what you signed up for is not all fun and games, and it's not one big party. There's some actual work you have to do here, and it's going to require discipline, because the motivation starts to wear off when the muscles start aching. So the third day is all about, how do you show up and deliver and give your best effort, even in times when you don't really feel like giving in effort at all. And that is really it's a framework for discipline, and it's a strategic book that helps you systematically create a plan to be disciplined, more discipline in your life, not depending on motivation at all, because I just told you motivation is for amateurs. How do you start professionalizing your process and be disciplined rather than motivated in order to do your work, which means it can be more consistent, more predictable, and of course your results are going to be the same. So you can get a free copy of that book, but just go on to thirddaybook.com. The book's free. Just cover the shipping, and it's all spelled out, thirddaybook.com.
Yeah, and we're going to have that in show notes because we know you're busy. So all you'll have to do is click the link. If you're on your phone, you can click it straight from your phone. If you're on your computer, you're going to be able to click there too. Also, I'm sure you're going to want to follow Dre. So we've got his Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok. He's on them all. So we're going to have all those in there. So whichever your preference is, you can be able to go to him and really check this out and get some information from him. Dre, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and really sharing with our listeners and giving them some really golden nuggets to think about this quarter that will propel them not only for next year, but for the rest of their life if they put into practice. And really, we keyed in on multiple things, but are you disciplined to get the results that you truly want? That's the question we have to ask ourselves, and hope listeners will be willing to do that. So, Dre, thank you so much for being with us.
Gary, thank you for sharing your platform, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Now, we have one other question we got to ask Dre. So I want to ask him the same question I ask every guest at the end of the podcast. And that is, what would be your best advice you would give to our business owners?
Best advice that I would give to business owners is keep in mind that mindset is the foundation of all success, is the foundation of all failure, is the foundation of all mediocrity in between. So never discount the value of mindset, even though you cannot see it, you can't count it, and you can't measure it. It leads to everything you can see, count, and measure. So focus on the mindset as the foundation. From the mindset come the actions. From the actions come the outcomes.
Great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. And listeners, I'm telling you, share this with some other people. This is a golden podcast that will really help people. So if you know other business owners, leaders, maybe everyone in your organization, share this with them, and then share that link. That's going to be my action item for you, is to share the link and go get his book, thirddaybook.com, and we'll have all of it in show notes. But go grab that book and really get yourself to the discipline to achieve the results that you want. You heard him talk about the proof and future proof, the skills that you're going to need going into this second half of this decade and going on further into 2030 on beyond. So we have to make ourselves better as business owners. And when we do that, we make our teams better and we make our companies better. And ultimately, then we get the results that we want. And I've talked about it before. We're all looking for that pot of gold that's under that rainbow. But that pot of gold only shows up by dedication, hard work, and discipline. And I want you to have that success next year for your business. So make it a great day. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another great guest.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.